Thank you and good morning. Good morning. It's a real honor and pleasure to be with you today to bring a lesson from God's Word. Sorry to be late getting up to the pulpit. We were trying to get the equipment ready, but I've always been technologically challenged. I have a call here. We didn't know exactly the right button to push, so I think this has been a better lesson. If we'd had it, well, it's just fine. We're going to preach the Word anyway. So we're glad to see you here this morning, and appreciate the opportunity to study God's Word together today. When Russ called me, I said, yeah, we have several folks in North Lexington that are good preachers who like to preach. I said, I'll be glad to find somebody. I called one fellow. He said he's going to be out of town. I said, well, that's okay. I called another fellow. He said he's going to be out of town. I said, that's okay. I was starting to run out of time, so you kind of got the bottom of the barrel here today. And we'll do the best we can. I only got 2 sermons, and I was here earlier this fall, so I had to think just a second about which sermon to preach today, because I've only got those 2, and probably some of you have heard this before, so bear with us today. This is my hometown in Paris, and it's always really special to go back to your hometown. It makes you think of lots of memories from growing up. One of my best memories growing up in Paris was the summertime. We get to go to the fair. Always go to the county fair. Wherever you're from, I'm sure you have memories in the summertime of going to the county fair. It's a big, big deal. Of course, for the kids, it's a big deal to get to ride some of those rides. And I can remember always having to walk through the exhibition hall out at Legion Park, and that's where everybody brought their stuff. Pies and cakes, and vegetables, things that have been grown. And you know the reason that you take those to the fair? You're looking for what? You're looking for the blue ribbon, right? You're looking for the prize to be the best, whatever it is, the best tomato, the best cucumber, the best chocolate pie, whatever it is. You're looking for that award of being the greatest in the county at making that particular thing or growing that particular thing. I like football, and I like Kentucky football. Those of you that like Kentucky football, you know how it is. It's a hard thing to do to be a Kentucky football fan. But last week was pretty special. We had a player on our team in the UK who was named All-American. And that's a really big thing. UK's only had, probably a handful of All-Americans in the whole time UK's ever played football. And I heard several people on the radio talking about Randall Cobb. They would say, Randall Cobb is one of the greatest football players ever played at the University of Kentucky. And I think that's probably true. He's one of the greatest. We're always very interested in the concept of being the best or being the greatest. Many of you, now some of the younger kids don't remember this, but the older ones of us remember a certain professional boxer who's actually from Kentucky. And one of his nicknames always was what? Remember? He was the greatest. I remember Muhammad Ali, that's what he called himself, the greatest. Well, the Bible in the New Testament talks about this very concept. In the scope of Christianity, there is something that is the greatest. And we ought to be really interested in that. Paul says in chapter 13, in verse 13 of chapter 13, in the 1 Corinthian letter, now abides faith, hope, and love, these 3. But the greatest, there's our word, the greatest of these is love. Jesus said to his apostles in John chapter 13, a new command I give to you, that you love one another. There's that word. Paul says the greatest of these, faith, hope, and love, is love. And Jesus said, I'm giving you a new command that you love one another. As I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, now notice this, by this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. John 13, 34 and 35. Paul said this in Ephesians chapter 4, beginning of verse 1. I beseech you, now he's talking to Christians. I beseech you, and the word beseech means I urge you, I diligently urge you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called, with all lowliness and gentleness, with long-suffering, bearing with one another in love. There's our word. Endeavoring, which means to work work hard at it. You endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Ephesians 4, 1 through 3. The Apostle John said this in 1 John 3, 10 and 11. In this, the children of God and the children of the devil are manifest. That is, made known. Here's how you tell the difference between someone who's a child of God and someone who lives for the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is he who does not love his brother. For this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Then in verse 14 he says, he who does not love his brother abides in death. This is a very serious matter. Love is the greatest Christian character attribute. And John says if we don't have love for our brothers, we're actually in death. In chapter 4, John would say, in 1 John, if someone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he's a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, how can he love God, whom he has not seen? And this commandment we have from him, that he who loves God must love his brother also. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. 1 John 4, verse 7. Now about faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love. It's holiday season upon us. Everybody's happy. Beautiful sunshine today. It ended a nice Lord's Day morning after having all that greatness last week. Holiday time. And one of the greatest things about holidays is, of course, food, eating. And those of you who love me, or just look at me, you can tell I like to eat. And I'm sure you do too. You know, one of my favorite foods at this time of year, any time of year really, is a sausage balls. Now, I bet there's some of you out there that like sausage balls just like I do. In fact, I like them so much, I learned how to make them for my mom. She's got a nice recipe, and I kept losing the recipe and finally put it on the BlackBerry. So I've got it with me all the time. I can tell you exactly how to make a sausage ball right here. And making a sausage ball is actually a lot of fun. Teach your kids how to do it. And those of you that make sausage balls, it's pretty simple. You get a big bowl, and you just pour all the ingredients in there, and then you mix it up. You got to work that sausage around, cheese, Bisquick. I found out as I was talking to people about this, there are different ways to make sausage balls. I was kind of surprised by that. There are different variations on the recipe. Some things you put in, some people put this in, some people put that in, leave something out. I was kind of surprised to hear that. But you know, when you're making a sausage ball and you're working all those ingredients together, you can leave this out or you can leave that out. But I promise you, there's one thing you cannot leave out of a sausage ball. What is it? It's the sausage. If you don't put your sausage in your sausage balls, you don't have a sausage ball. Now think about this. When it comes down to being a Christian, there is one thing you cannot take out. If you don't have the love that Paul's talking about here in 1 Corinthians 13, that Jesus talked about, that John talked about, we've read about, you are not a mature, growing, proper Christian. Because Paul says it is the greatest attribute. It's the thing you can't do without. You've got to have this love that Christ exhibited for us. That God exhibited for us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. That whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That condition, that saved condition we're in as Christians, is brought about by love, the love of God. John 3, verse 16. Now, let's talk about what love really is. If it's this important, and I would propose to you, I hope I've proved it to you, it is that important. It is essential. Then it's very, very important that we understand what we're talking about. That we understand what the word here, in these various verses we've read, really means. The word love that's translated into our English Bibles comes from a Greek word spelled A-G-A-P-E. Okay, just 5 letters. I want you to remember this. You know, none of us is a Greek scholar, but there's some Greek words that as Christians we ought to know, just a few, that are really important. This is one of them. A-G-A-P-E, pronounced agape. And if that's a new word to you, take a pen or something and write that down, because I want you to know this concept today. Agape, A-G-A-P-E. It's a Greek word translated love hundreds of times in the New Testament. That's this word that we're talking about. But the Greeks had different words for love. We use the word love in English for all kinds of things, right? We do this all the time. Say, I love sausage balls. I've already said that this morning, right? I love ice cream. I like to go here. I love to travel. Well, we also talk about loving our spouse or loving our children. We use the exact same word, but it's actually a very different concept, isn't it? When I talk about loving sausage balls or loving ice cream, what am I really talking about? It's something I like, right? It makes me have a good feeling, right? When you have certain foods, you say, I love that food. Really, you're talking about your feelings towards something. Or you talk about your family. I love my brother, I love my sister in my family. That's really talking about that feeling of family that you have, based on all those experiences that you have. Okay? But the word love that's translated from agape is not the same. It's not the same feeling you have when you eat your favorite ice cream. It's not the same feeling you have when you go to visit your parents. It's a different word. And here's what it means. Agape, A-G-A-P-E, means this. It is your desire for the very highest good for another person, regardless of how you feel about it. Now, let me say that again. Agape love means you have the very highest desire for good for somebody else, regardless of how you may feel about it. Agape is a love that comes from your mind, or as the Bible says, your heart. To love someone in agape means you make a decision to love. Agape is something that you can do yesterday in a certain way or a certain level, and today you can do it better. You can tomorrow do even better at loving in that way, because this is something you have to decide. This is something that we train our minds to do. We decide we are going to love somebody. We decide we're going to love our brethren, our brothers and sisters. We desire to love and goodwill for other people. That's a decision of the mind. You can love someone in agape and really not even like them. Jesus would say what? Love your enemies. That's the word he uses, agape. Well, if you're going to love someone that doesn't love you back, that takes some work, right? That's really not natural for us as human beings. We have a tendency to do what? When somebody loves us, that's the person we like to love back. But when someone does harm to us, hurts us, talks down to us, offends us, shows disrespect toward us, what do we tend to do? Not like that person. Jesus says just the opposite. When you're following Jesus Christ, you express love for that other person, regardless of how you feel about it. You may not really like the situation at all. You may not really like the person in the sense of that kind of warm feeling that you have for people that you like your family or your best friends. Jesus says you love everybody. You love even your enemies, because this is a love that you use your mind to express. And you can grow up in this kind of love and make a decision to do it better than perhaps we've ever done it before. And that's why understanding the Greek word that's actually used here is really important. Because it's not a word based on feeling. It's a word based on our heart, our mind, what we decide. Now, the Greeks had another word called phileo. P-H-I-L-E-O.